and more just minutes away. But first, President Obama missing the budget deadline for the 4th time in his 5 years in office. So why isn't the president doing his job? Senator Rob Portman is on the Senate Budget Committee. He joins us. Nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you again, Greta.
And I should probably add that going back to President Johnson, there have been other presidents who have likewise not met this deadline. You were in administration, Republican administration's OMB. Did you meet the deadline?
We did meet the deadline. And it's not easy to meet these deadlines, but particularly at a time of record deficits and debts and an economy that's so weak. We just saw the economy actually shrunk in the 4th quarter. The president should be meeting these deadlines. And as was just said on your program, we don't know when he's going to meet it. So will it happen before the State of the Union? It looks like it won't. It's possible this year that the budget won't even come up before the House passes its budget again, because the House Republicans have responsibly been passing budgets. The Senate Democrats, on the other hand, as you know, for more than 3 years now have not passed a budget. Again, at a time of record debts and deficits, you would think at least we'd have a blueprint for spending.
But even more than it's the job, it's the law, and I realize that others before him have, going back to President Johnson, have ignored it. But it just happened. I mean, like the rest of us, we follow the law and we do our jobs. So I mean, like, why does this just seem like as it's okay to do? It's like okay to sort of. I mean, there's no management when you don't meet these criteria.
Well, maybe because other than this show tonight, you won't get a lot of pressure about it. And it's a pattern, too. There are 5 other examples that I can point to where the president has not met a significant deadline. One is a report on how the sequester is supposed to work, how you implement the sequester, just not done. They have missed most of their mid-session reviews, which is the mid-year, the mid-July deadline. The last 2 were missed. They've also missed the Chinese currency report time and time again. And more recently, the Medicare trigger. When Medicare, uses a certain amount of general revenue, you're supposed to have a proposal as to how you would propose to reform Medicare. They've simply ignored it. And then finally, the regulatory agenda. They're supposed to do that 2 times a year. They put it off, and finally issued it 2 days before Christmas.
Well, let me tell you something that I have a problem with. The president signed today that the House and the Senate have passed a bill to suspend the debt ceiling until May. Now, that's suspending the debt ceiling. Typically, you raise the debt ceiling, so at least you put the lid on what the government can spend. It's like when you have a Visa card and you reach your credit, you call up and they'll give you another $1,000 on your line of credit, and that's your new limit. Well, what has now happened is Capitol Hill has suspended that limit. It's like now you're going to an American Express card with no limit, and you've given the president no limit until mid-May.
I don't think American Express would appreciate that comparison because it couldn't be as bad as.
But I mean, but there's no limit on the president until mid-May.
Well, the president's limited by the appropriations process. The House and the Senate still, under the Constitution, have the power of the purse, so he's not supposed to spend more than's been appropriated, and then the entitlement programs are under law. But having said that, you're right, it's a huge problem. Look, we should not extend the debt limit again, and that's what's coming up in a few months, as you said. It may be 4 to 6 months, by the way, unless there are real spending cuts. As you know, I proposed that legislation. It got a lot of votes on the floor of the Senate, not quite enough for a majority. But it's really a simple idea. It just says a $1 reduction in spending for every $1 increase in the debt limit. And by the way, you get just about to a balanced budget over 10 years if you do that.
Senator, always nice to see you, sir. Sorry to cut you short with this breaking news tonight.